Okay, so today we are going to talk about soft skills. Like I said, we already talked about resumes. Hopefully, you guys are working on that and using what you learned to kind of develop or update your resume. Soft skills are super important, not only for going through the interviews, but just in life in general and in your job. So, do they may know what soft skills are and why they would be important? I'll take that as a no. So, soft skills are things like um, your dependability, your work ethic, your integrity, things like that, the way you communicate. Those are all considered soft skills. And we don't really talk about, like, oh, you have great communication skills, you have great soft skills. We just say you're a really good communicator, whether it's written or oral. But when you're thinking about being out in the workforce, we call them soft skills. There's also professional skills, which are different. Professional skills are more technical. These are soft skills. So these are more like skills that you have when you're interacting, okay? They kind of make up who you are. So the first one we're going to talk about is communication. So communication is everything from verbal communication, written communication, to your body language. So if I'm here like this, somebody unmute and tell me what message this sends to you.
Something's up.
Something's up. Maybe it's closed off. But if I'm smiling, that's a more inviting, right? So those are different body languages, different ways you can communicate with your body. A handshake is a way that you communicate with body language. So when you put your hand out, and right now, obviously, we're not shaking hands because of the pandemic, but if in a normal situation, you would put your hand out and you'd have a nice grip and you just kind of give a handshake. Now, if you were to hold that grip kind of like this and go like that's a wimpy handshake, that is all considered body language. So when you're interacting with people, think about your body language and not just the words that are coming out of your mouth, okay? Verbal communication is going to be if you're writing a letter, say that you are interested in applying for this job and you're emailing them or you're writing them a letter. That's verbal communication. So how that comes across represents you. So you want to definitely make sure that you're thinking about what you're writing before you send it, review it, and things like that. Verbal communication is what we're saying. We want to make sure we're not negative. Sometimes we have a negative situation in our life, but we always want to think about the positive or put a positive spin. Maybe something didn't go the way you wanted it to go, but what did you learn from that situation? And there's always lessons in situations. So when I'm talking to students, I'm always telling them when you're interviewing, you don't want to be negative. You don't want to come across negative. You don't want to put people down. Oh, I dropped out of basketball because I didn't like the coach. Oh, I didn't do well in that class because the teacher didn't grade my work. You really want to focus on positive areas of your life and talk about that. If when I was interviewing, if somebody was bad mouthing or talking down or negative about a situation, that's a warning sign. So think about how you're communicating, what you're saying, what your body is saying when you're thinking about communication, okay? So the next skill we're going to talk about is work ethic. So you might think that you haven't had a job and so you don't have that work ethic yet. But if you've ever done anything in your life, like school, sports, extracurricular activities, you are starting to build work ethic. And we talked about this a little bit last week on how your resume, we're showing things through sports and extracurricular, volunteer, that you're building that work ethic. Well, here we're wanting to display that in our communication. So I will talk about myself and my family a lot because that's the easiest thing to do. When I was at my former job, one of the things that they would always say on an evaluation was that I had strong work ethic because I was willing to put the time and energy in. I wasn't someone who called in work a lot, maybe if a kid was sick or something like that, but I was at work and I worked the hours. So I wasn't taking a lot of breaks. I was taking the normal required breaks that I was required to take, but I wasn't taking more breaks. You didn't see me around the water cooler or chatting with friends. I was really working hard. Um, so maybe you can think about relate that to sports or an activity that you've been involved with, and what was your work ethic in that activity? Do you see other people who maybe are goofing off and you're working hard? Okay, so hard work pays off. You when you're in it, it may not feel like it, but over time there are people that are watching you and they see that. Work ethic is definitely something that employers look at, and so we want to strive to show that in areas of our life. So through our resume, through our communication, we want to um, show examples of strong work ethic. Okay, so dependability. So this is something that is really important, and it's not just can I rely on you as being a good person? It's can I rely on you to show up on time and represent my company and do a good job? Okay, so they're looking for people they can rely on. If you show up to an interview 5 minutes late, that is not a good sign. That's a warning sign. So we want to make sure that we are putting our best foot forward. We are showing up a little bit early. Maybe if your interview is at 11 o'clock, you show up at 10:55 to make sure that you're there on time and ready to go. Are you showing in and clocking into work on time? Are you dependable in the job? Can they rely on you to get the job done? Again, I go back to volunteering or sports. When you're volunteering or part of a band or a team, are you showing up and giving it your all? That is dependability. Okay, so you want to start creating these habits that show that you're dependable, not just in the classroom, but outside the classroom as well. Because what we know is who you are outside the classroom or inside the classroom carries over to your personal life. So it's the same, the opposite. So who you are in your personal life is going to carry over into the classroom or into the work setting. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this with communication, your attitude. You can see that guy in the upper right hand corner, kind of like this, very closed off. And then the young lady down below, she's got a smile, very welcoming. You want to approach her. That's one of the things that I always look at. And I always think about your attitude. So when I'm talking and meeting with students and they're telling me, that they're no good at that and they're no good at that, and I'm like, well, let's focus on what you're really good at and let's shift that mindset. Anything that you're not good at, it just means you got to give it more time. You got to work on it a little bit harder. You can't change anybody but yourself. And so really focusing on your attitude is huge here. Employers want to bring in people that are positive and that are going to help with their, not just their, the work and the product, but they want somebody who's going to help with morale too. You don't want to go and work at a place where everybody is negative. You really want a great environment, great work environment. Okay, so your attitude contributes to that, and how you present yourself shows your attitude when you're in an interview, how you're holding your body, your facial expressions. And so these are things that I encourage you to practice. I used to tell people when I was doing mock interviews to practice talking about themselves to the mirror with a smile on their face, watch their body language, and people would think I was crazy. But when they would come back for their actual interview, I asked them, did you do that? And they'd say, oh, I did. It was the most awkward thing I ever did, but it really helped me. It helped me with my confidence to be able to talk about myself. I listened to what I was saying. Now, okay, so that was a long time ago. Now I tell people to record themselves talking to themselves and then rewatch it. And that's even harder because you're seeing all of the things that you are like, oh, I need to fix that. Oh, I need to fix that. I say a lot. I say like a lot. But these are good things to practice to get ready because we know practice makes perfect. So that is your attitude. Adaptability. I think this is an area that we have all either done really well with or we've struggled with this year. Okay. Being a flexible and adjusting well to change. And obviously, this year has been a lot of change thrown at us. And how we adapt is really telling of how we adapt in the real world, in our lives. Okay, so how flexible are we? So I teach fitness classes, and one of the things I talk about is flexibility is not just being able to balance, but being flexible in your life. It really helps, not only the attitude piece of it, but it helps when things like a pandemic come and hit you, or a life crisis, or anything. You're able to navigate easier through that change. Okay, so I'll go back to I don't know, 19 years ago, when my husband got laid off from his job, and he was able to, a career that he was in for about 8 years, he was able to pick up and just adapt to it. And he ended up going back to school. A lot of times that is something that really sets you back. And he looked at it as an opportunity for change, an opportunity to grow. And so that's that positive mindset that I want to go back to, is how you are looking at life. One door closes, another one opens, is really important. So being able to pivot or navigate through all of these different changes that you're going to encounter over the years, over the course of your life, is really important. Okay, not just personally, mentally, physically, but in a work setting. So employers do look at the adaptability, because businesses are changing just as we are. Okay, time management. So I feel like students nowadays have had to get really good at time management and organizing their time and using their time wisely, because you guys are now in this virtual learning, right? So you have to have everything figured out. I cannot figure out what the schedule is. All I know is that between 10:30 and 1, you guys have a break. But for you guys have to figure out when those breaks are, when your class is, assignments, what days are off on, when, if you're in the morning class, afternoon class. Having all of that organized is really crucial. So whether you organize things in a planner, you put your assignments down in there and upcoming events and activities, or you have it in a phone and you organize it that way, time management and being organized is essential in your life. Otherwise, you start forgetting things, and you drop balls. But eventually, right now you might have a lot of time, but eventually what's going to happen is that time, you'll still have 24 hours in your day, but it'll start filling up. And so you really have to use that time wisely. So for me, working from home is really challenging. It's not ideal, but I have to use every moment of my time really wisely. And so that means I put my phone in the other room, so I don't see it when someone calls me or I get a text message until I go into the other room to grab it. Because what happens is I get distracted. The light flashes, or I hear a beep, and I'm like, ooh, who is it? Oh, it's my best friend, and they're texting me. Oh, that's so funny. And then what I know is, an hour later, I've just lost an hour of my day. So being organized, setting systems in place so that you have that time management, and using that time wisely. So like you, I am a student as well. So I have to schedule into my day time for my classes, time for homework, reports, research, all of that stuff. And it's a lot. It's a lot. So when you get back to, playing sports, being in band, choir, working, all of that stuff, it's going to be really important that you get organized so that you stay on top of things and use that time wisely. It's huge in the work environment, because people are looking to give you projects and they want you to be able to have good time management to get the work done. Okay. Nobody wants to work harder than they need to. It's just working wiser. Okay, so teamwork. I love this one because I think working in a high school has really shown me how many opportunities you guys have to work in teams. Again, through theater, choir, volunteering, sports, all of that is teamwork. And working collaboratively in teams is very important. Unless you're, an entrepreneur, you're, working on your own. Even then, you'll probably have teams of people to help you. Uh, I think in life we all work in teams, and depending on what type of job you're looking for, that could be a big piece of it. So relating that to your life. So maybe you were on the softball team and you have to work as a team, football team, basketball team, any of those sports, you work as a team. And maybe you aren't involved with that. Think about class assignments, projects, things like that. Teams are really important in life. And it's really important that you figure out your place in the team. Are you the leader? Are you the one that kind of sits back and observes and then shares an opinion? Are you the organizer? Are you the note taker? That's kind of the things that we're trying to figure out. Who are you in that team? And you can relate it to whatever's going on in your life. Okay, so integrity. This is a huge one, and I think it's really important that we always hold ourselves with high standards, are honest, and have high moral principles. Um, and I think you want to be trusted in your community, in your family, your friends, at school, at work, and integrity is one of those areas that. If you don't have it, it is a disservice to you. And if I have seen people go down a very negative path, and I have seen others rise based off of their morals. And so I really throw this out there as think about the decisions that you're making and are those good decisions. I always say, so how would your mom feel about that? Or grandma? Because I know high schoolers are like, I'm not my mom. But grandma, would grandma be happy with that decision? Do you want to make people proud? Do you want to make yourself proud? But if grandma says that decision's a good decision, then maybe it's okay, as long as grandma has high integrity as well. All right, that is it. I try to go through these super fast. I want to give you guys a lot of information, but I don't want to take a lot of time. So I am going to hop back into this meeting and stop presenting and open it up now for questions that maybe you guys have for me. And don't forget, if you don't have questions for me, I am going to call on you to ask questions. So you can feel free to turn your cameras on now. You can leave them off. We are still recording. But if you have a question, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
So to find out like what position I fill in a group or like in a team, what steps would I need to take to kind of look at that?
Yeah. I would say you have to look at the situation. That's a great question, by the way. The situation and kind of think about. Um, so I will use myself as an example here. So in my former position, I used to lead a leadership conference, and within that group, there were 10 people that I managed, and we were putting together a conference down in LA. Every year we did it for 13 years. And each person had a different role within that. So I think about like, I'm trying to think of a sport that I actually know something about. Soccer, where you have a goalie, you have a forward, you have a defender. Those are all different roles. They're all very important, but you just have to figure out what your role is. Some teams will have captains. That's a role. Some people are in charge of the warm-ups for sports. In my position, I oversaw everything. And then each of those people had a different responsibility, a different role. So one person was in charge of marketing, one person was in charge of swag, one person was in charge of the presentations, one person was in charge of travel. So everybody, and it was teams, I should say that. Everybody had a certain role. So look in your life, in your friend group, in school, in sports, and kind of take a step back and say, okay, where do I see myself? Knowing that every role is important. every role contributes to that bottom line. And not everybody is a leader, nor do we want everybody to be a leader. We want them to be good in leaders in that role that they have. So just because I am not the principal at Thurston High School doesn't mean I'm not a leader in some way. So you don't get I know people get hung up on being like a leader, but we don't want to worry about that as much as we are like, I'm an active participant. I am that one that comes up with ideas. I'm creative. I think outside the box, that kind of stuff. Does that help, Andrew?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good question. All right, Andrew got us started. So who's next? What other questions? All right, Jacob, you're up. What do you got? Come on, Jacob. You can come up with any question. Not really. Okay. Okay. Was this helpful? Does this make sense to you? I'm seeing a yes in the comments. Anybody else? Yes, and Isaac. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Perfect. Awesome. Okay. So we're almost out of time. So I am going to go ahead and stop the recording. But thank you guys so much for joining. Next week, we're going to talk about interview skills. And since I didn't hear back from anybody about working on their resume with me or interest in mock interviews, I've not scheduled mock interviews. But if that's still something that you're interested in, let me know and we can kind of make that happen. Again, you do have to go through the resume development, soft skills, and the interview training to do a mock interview. Okay.